Oh, when I listened to what your opening comment and the video that you watched and the message that you received and how it landed with you, it took me back to a specific chapter in my life, which I am grateful that I have the opportunity to share with you and your audience today. I will never forget the time when the consultant said, I am sorry, it is cancer, it is inoperable, it is incurable. And I thought, what does that actually mean then? Does that mean the tumor continues growing and they keep snipping bits off? Or what does that actually look like? And I asked the question, and my father put his hand on my lap and said, what he's trying to say, Pet, is I'm terminally ill. And you could have knocked me down with a feather because he was my father sitting next to me, a bit slimmer, right? But other than that, he looked larger than life. He looked healthy. In fact, him looking slimmer made him look healthy because he could have lost a little bit of tummy weight anyway. He looked great. And so having to compute that this man sitting next to me is now at the end of his life, um, it was very, very difficult for me to comprehend. In fact, I would go so far as to say I didn't understand what was being explained to me. The first thing that my father said when I was still trying to digest this information was, please, Pet, don't let my business die. Don't let my business die. So not, oh Lord, I'm dying, or I love you all, or anything. It was like, don't let my business die. And I was thinking, this is not happening right now. This is really not happening. I'm here. I'm a mother of a very young child. My youngest must have been about 14 months old. I'd recently been made redundant. My husband had also recently been made redundant, but was working in an office next to my father's funeral parlour. And I was thinking, how do I say yes? And how do I say no to this dying man's request, who I'm really not believing is dying, by the way?
Yes.
How is all of this going to work? In that moment, I was having to think about potential loss of my father,
Mm.
potential loss of the livelihood that I had carved out for myself. So at that point in time, I owned an online business called Nature's Parlour, which sold natural skin and hair care products. And I was enjoying doing that, working from home with my little boy. Um, Potential loss of my work-life balance, because the ask that my father was giving was, now go back to work and potentially work with your husband. And I had not done that before either, not really. So potential loss of so many things caused by this catalytic event of my
Mm.
father dying. Not many people know this, but um, they'll know that the answer was yes. I will look after your business, because that was the request, literally the deathbed request that was made of me and my husband. We said yes, we would. So goodbye to Nature's Parlour. I sold that. Goodbye to being a happy at-home mother. I loved being with my little boy at home, but we put him in nursery. And actually, he was ready for nursery. I wasn't ready for him to go to nursery, but he was chomping at the bit for nursery. So he was fine. Um, and then taking on this business whilst dealing with my grief. So the bit that people don't often know is the very first funeral I directed was my father's.
Wow.
So I was tasked when he was ill. I became his primary carer because I was an at-home mum. I had the flexibility. I didn't have to ask any employers for permission for leave or anything like that. So for me, I felt that was a privileged position to be in, right? And I loved being able to take care of my dad. I loved being able to be the ears and eyes for him on the hospital appointments and everything. Um, and I was grateful that I could help him in that
Mm,
way. But
mm,
my thing was I had to now ask him what did he want for his end of life plans, because
mm,
even though he was a funeral director, he didn't have anything written down. And it's something I've spoken very openly about since. You know, the importance of preparing for the inevitable so your children don't have to have those scary, uncomfortable conversations, and the importance of having those conversations while everyone's still well, while,
mm.
no one's dying, no one's suffering, no one's, being put on the spot.
Yes.
Um, so we managed to gather from my dad that he wanted a funeral befitting of a funeral director. So that was it then, we could pull all the stops out, we could do all of this. But meantime, Keji, this was still my first funeral, right?
Wow.
I've not directed one before. Um, so I had to think, in a mindset of service. That was something
Mm,
that my dad really instilled in me. When I'd done little bits and pieces at the funeral parlour before, he said, would you like to work here? And I said, Daddy, I'd be useless. They'd be crying, I'd be crying, everybody would be crying. We won't get anything done. And he said, no, pet, you wouldn't do that because you put the family first.
yes.
Oh, that's a Jedi mind trick, because I can hardly say, no, I wouldn't put the family first. Of
Yes.
course, the correct answer, the only answer is yes, you put the family first.
Yes.
So
Mm,
I put my dad's wishes front and center. And this
mm,
thing about how to deal with grief, I was still managing the loss of my dad and still having to think about having a service mindset for my dad
mm,
and having that be something that could help me in a helpless situation. I
mm,
couldn't save him.
yes.
I tried. I stayed
Mm,
up like the silly o'clock in the morning trying to find all sorts of cures for his very rare form of cancer and
mm,
clearly couldn't. He
mm.
was only ill for 7.5 weeks before he died.
Wow.
But empowerment for me was being able to be active and be able to do something,
Mm,
really do something meaningful, and
mm,
also go on to show the community that I would still be there for them.
mm,
I made sure I still went and saw about my grief support, because a huge concern for me was
mm,
that I would cry at a time that was inappropriate for my clients, right?
mm,
I was struggling with crying. I was really struggling with crying, and I thought the last thing I want to do is be triggered by someone when I'm doing an arrangement or something, and they're saying, "Oh, my dad's dying, and it's really sudden, and I'm going to be the primary care," and I think, "Oh my God, just like me," and then I start crying. So I did take it very seriously that I needed to take care of my grief
mm,
and and I felt very responsible for that.
yeah.
And I know that my circumstances made grief unavoidable for me, right? Because
Mm,
I'm here dealing with my very personal and very public loss. My dad's funeral was very well attended. I mean, it made the newspapers. Did
wow.
my father's funeral. It was massive. We had the New Orleans band playing. We had gospel singers. We had Dove releases. It was a big, massive, grand affair. We had a bishop attend. A former Lord Mayor came and spoke for my dad, and it was just really, really massive. So I was grief stricken in this very public way. People who would come into the parlor would say, "Oh, I was a friend of your dad's, I really miss him." And
Mm,
I'd be getting into that grief space and then be thinking, I'm going to have to deal with this because I am not the focus right now.
Mm.
Somebody else is the focus. So, Keji, I have to say it had to be a priority that I managed my grief.
Mm.
It had to be because um, I couldn't let anybody down. And in order not to let anybody down, I couldn't let myself down, right?
Mm.
The thing about self-care is the best care because you can't say you're doing somebody a favor by running a marathon without your trainers on,
Wow.
right? You got to put your trainers on first, then run the marathon, yeah? No one's going to say, oh, look how hard she ran and she did it with the bare feet. They'll be thinking, what should you do that for? She should just put on her trainers and then run the marathon if that's what she wanted to do.
Mm.
So I know, and I'll say this to people who are watching and listening, you've got to take care of your grief in your way, right? As long as it's healthy. I'm not talking about going out and doing destructive things, but
Mm.
that in itself, taking care of your grief, can be very empowering. And
Mm.
I found, helping others after I'd helped myself to be very empowering. My father left a powerful legacy, and I know you know all about legacy
Yes.
from grief, right?
Yes. Yes.
You know all about that. And my dad
Mm.
left a powerful legacy. Through that, I have become the first Black woman in the country to own an independently owned funeral parlour.
Wow.
Um, I have seen as well from what happened with my father, my empowerment has been to empower others to live a fulfilling life, a life with no regrets. Do not come to the funeral director at the end of your life saying, I wish I did this, I
Mm.
wish I did that.
Mm.
And that informed my career change
Mm.
into coaching.
Mm. Wow. This, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking to myself, you spoke about self-care. You talk about it's important. It is your responsibility to take care and manage your grief. Can you give us an insight into how you've done that? I know you had your therapeutic sessions, possibly.
Yeah.
What other tools did you lean on to help you?
Oh man, that is a fantastic question because I get asked this. When I was more active in the funeral parlor,
Yeah.
people would come in and ask me, what am I supposed to do with this all-encompassing emotion? Where am I supposed to put it? What am I supposed to do with it? It just seems to be with me in everything that I do. And then I laugh at something, realize I'm laughing at something, think, oh, but grief, and then, and then that sort of consumes up the laughter and even guilt trips potentially.
Yes.
Um, there was something that really helped me through my grief with my father.
Mm.
When I was speaking to some of my suppliers at Nature's Parlour, when I realized I needed to wind it down, one of my suppliers um, was so kind to me. And he said, I'm so sorry to hear that your father's dying, Xina. In my faith, we say that difficult times are an opportunity to lean on God.
Mm.
And I've never forgotten that. I've never ever forgotten that. In that there was an element of not having to carry everything myself
Mm.
and not having to have all the answers myself and
Mm.
not having to be perfect in my grief, with this facade of being okay, not having to do that and become isolated because we know grief is different for every single person it affects. So one person might lose their father, they could be one of siblings, and each of those siblings receive that grief in a very different way. Then that can be isolating, right?
Mm. Mm.
But because of that advice, I didn't feel quite so isolated. It was just a case of having to remember that my faith was actually an option for me.
Yes.
Um, The other things which are relevant for people, whether they have a faith of any description or not, would just being in nature, like being able to go for a walk somewhere green and beautiful, and take that in and have deep breaths and be able to cry potentially with no one seeing. And that
Mm.
was something as well. Crying and tears can be very cathartic. Yeah. And whilst some people will receive the message, be strong, and
Mm.
they don't have to be strong, they don't have to be strong. They can decide what kind of strength they want on their own terms, yeah, and do that. And sometimes people don't know what to say, so they say what they've heard people saying all along, which is be strong. If someone's had a miscarriage, oh, you can always have another one. If
Mm.
someone has lost their child, oh, but you've got the other children.
Mm.
Like they're intertransferable, right? Which we know that's not true. But
Yes.
sometimes people say these things because they don't know any better.
Mm.
But as individuals, we can decide on for ourselves what does strong mean. If you feel like crying and you're not normally a crier, but your body and your symptomatic response is yearning for tears, maybe for you, being strong is taking time out to cry,
Mm. Mm.
but you get to choose. You
Yeah.
absolutely get to choose. And again, this can be empowering, right?
Mm.
How you choose to self medicate. And I mean that in a holistic term, not in a literal prescriptive medical way, but
Mm.
how you choose to self care, how to do profound self care. And that's the thing. Grief can be a profoundly intense feeling and emotion and happening, an imposition, right? Our response can be deep and
Mm.
and powerful and
Yeah.
profound as well.
Yes. Yes.
And that can be just deciding, well, ordinarily, I would only have a soak in the bath once a month because I'm a shower person,
Yes.
and that's my treat. But actually, I've just had a huge loss. I'm going to have a soak in the bath every other day to
Mm.
take care of this profound feeling that I'm having. You might decide that, well, I normally like to cook for my family once a month on Sundays and have everybody over. You might decide, well, actually, my self-care response might be having an open house on Sundays and inviting people round and letting them know, oh, by the way, I might cry and I don't want to be asked to be strong. Can I have a hug instead?
Oh. Mm.
Yeah, that can be the response. But in grief, we get to choose. We get to choose. We
Mm.
don't have to have what's imposed,
Mm.
right? We don't have to have what society perceives as the standard response.
Mm.
Oh, you'll get over it. I've heard someone say in my parlour, a family came in and they came in and another family came in at the same time, and it was fine. It was all organized. There was nobody imposing on anybody else's time. Because the second family who came in came to view the first family. They were related cousins, right? So it was all fine. And one of the uncles said, um, it's a shame you've lost your mum. I think that was his sister.
Mhm.
Right? Have you gotten over your dad's death yet? You get over it yet? You know? And the niece said, no, not really. Not really. And he was like, it's been a long time. It's been a long time. Keju, you and I probably know that it's not a linear thing, right? It's like waves. It's like waves. So you can be absolutely fine and laughing and joking about great times you've had with the person that you lost. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in tears. It's like,
Mm.
wow, where did that even come from?
Yes.
So don't, it's an opportunity not only to lean on God if that's your thing. If it's not, that doesn't need to be imposed on you either. It
Yes.
is an opportunity for profound self-compassion.
Mm.
Yeah, profound self-compassion, profound self-care, profound self-love. One of the things that I found that worked was salt baths. I have no idea why they do, but salt baths I swear by. And it doesn't make you happy and jolly, but it does seem to neutralize the profound feeling of and heaviness and weight of grief. And I remember a woman whose son had been murdered, and the funeral was delayed because of the autopsy and the murder trial that was happening. So she didn't have the funeral as a way to have her public embracing by the community and acknowledgement that this is the loss that she and her family have experienced, because that's part of the purpose of a
Yeah.
funeral, right? And she said, I just can't sleep. I cannot sleep. And I said, I do not know why this works, but try salt in your bath, any kind of salt. Radox, even though that's technically not even a salt, but Radox bath salts, cheap as chips, sets the table salt, expensive Dead Sea salts, whatever kind of salt you want, pour it in that bath. And I think I knew she was going to come back the next day, so I bought her a little packet of Radox bath salts. And she came back afterwards and said, Xina, I have had the best sleep that I've had in weeks. And for me, if that's worked for somebody in her situation, and don't get me wrong, it's not snake oil, right? It's not one thing cures everything. But for me, that was a testament to the fact that salt baths can
Mm.
potentially really help somebody who's bereft. So
Wow.
that's just some of the things that I
Yes.
recommend for self-care in grief.
Fantastic. And I wanted you just now to speak about your coaching.
Okay.
And yeah, I want people to really know that part of you. And also because I know that there are people out there that be watching, and I know that could really benefit from what you offer. Even when I spend an hour with you, I felt re-energized out of that conversation. And I just thought, if somebody had access to that in terms of your coaching services, imagine the transformative experience that they would have had. So if you could talk to us a little bit about that, and then how can people get in touch? And are you taking clients at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So my coaching is executive leadership coaching, and my specific area of interest is for mothers over the age of 40. I have a belief that mothers who are in leadership roles over the age of 40 are in a beautiful position to change the world for the better, because they have a vested interest in future generations, because they have given birth to someone who's going to be part of the future generation. But they're also leading teams, they're also running organizations. They tend to still be really active members of their communities. They tend to have third sector roles like chairing charities, right, Keji?
Yes.
um, ourselves being cases in point. Trustees, they work with their local religious organisations, so they are in powerful positions, but they often don't know it.
Mm.
They tend to be dealing with things like menopause as well, and my role really is to serve as a catalyst for positive change by helping to empower that
Mm.
woman. And
Mm.
in doing so, she goes on then to empower her teams, have really beautifully run organizations, and an organization that is really keyed into having a community approach, right? And having integrity and those old fashioned values that people sometimes think they can't bring to business, but they can. And
Mm.
I help them work out strategies that they can do that. But also they help with their positively influence their children's friends, their children's friends' parents,
Mm.
everybody who comes over to play, and people who are attached to that. I work directly often with organizations, with corporate organizations. So if you're working in corporate now and you think that I can work well and add value to your organization, you can just contact me, Xina at motherofabundance.com. And just let me know and see how I can become on the vendors system or go through the procurement process for your organization. In terms of people who, like me in my past, would not have been able to afford a coach, because when I needed coaching most, I couldn't afford one, right? There are various things that I do in community. And again, if you want to contact me on Xina at motherofabundance.com, if you need me to speak for a community organization, then I'm definitely open to that as well. Philanthropy runs right alongside my corporate business.
Xina, you're a treasure.
Thank you, Keji.
You're a treasure. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just feel that I have to watch this again because no, honestly, as we were talking, I was thinking I have to watch it again because there's so many things that you said. One of the things that I wanted to share before we go is when you said that we get to choose, we don't have to have what is imposed. We get to choose. Even in your grief, you get to choose. And that is very powerful, very powerful. Because people can get lost in it and everybody's like, you need to do this, you need to do that. You get to choose. And that is powerful. And I just want to say, we've come to the end of it. It's gone so quick. It's like we continue to speak. I am honored and I'm so grateful for what you've done, coming on here and sharing this with us.
I'm not sure if it's just me, Keji, but I've lost the volume. Can you hear me? Got you now. Got you now.
Yeah. Somebody was trying to call me. Oh, you always get phone calls in the middle of a live. So I said I'm going to put all the information in the comment section so people can get in touch with you. There's a couple of projects I'm thinking about that I will be coming back to you, and I'll link you up with those individuals because I think definitely you can explore it if you choose. And so so thank you so much. I'll upload everything on here and then people can be watching. I'm going to be watching again, getting all the wisdom nuggets and putting it down and using it in my my journey of grief, you know. It's still a journey. And thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.